So let's go to our comparative lexicon. And I'm going to just keep going. Let's find a really juicy noun. The difference, of course, is Justamija Qal pina. It's going to be between these two E vowels. It's never going to actually show up as a stop. Instead of iri, we get iri. Is that you, YouTube? Are you joining us today? We are going to be working on our big project, Justamija Qal. So I hope you are joining us today, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be deriving a noun paradigm and a verb paradigm from the proto-language, which we've already developed in this playlist. So check out the playlist if you haven't seen any of that already. This will make a lot more sense probably if you do. And then we're going to derive those paradigms and bring them into the modern language, into this descendant language, Justamija. So without further ado, let's go in and get started. Whoa, hotkeys, excellent. Okay, so what we need to do, we need to look at the proto-Qal grammar, which we have here. And let's start with the verbs. And so let's take the proto-Qal grammar, let's get the Justamija grammar up, and I've made these little sections here. I don't know, I'll have to move something so you can see them better. Boom. Noun paradigm, verb paradigm. So let's start off with the nouns. Let's start off with the nouns. Oh, hold on, wait, I'm getting a message from Lucy here. All right, Lucy, what's going on? We can't see the chat on screen. That is a mystery to me too. I do not know how that works per se. It is loaded up, should be working. Okay, here's where I raise up my hands and I say, I don't know how this really works. So if I'm going to just keep going because I don't know how to fix it, and I'm not going to subject you to my technical wranglings. But if anyone does know something, I'd be delighted to hear about it. Okay, so we're going to talk about verb paradigms. And we're talking about noun paradigms. What's going on here? You see what happens? These things, they throw me and then I'm lost. Okay, but you know what? We recover and we move on. So we have our case forms in the proto-language, we have these, actually let's zoom up here a bit. We have our primary cases. Nominative is no ending. So we can just leave that here. Vocative so far is no ending. We might change that. Genitive is this ch ending. And these are the primary cases, which means that they don't, you can't stack one after the other. You can have a primary case and you can stack these other kinds of cases, postpositional cases after them, but you cannot stack a primary case after a postpositional case or on top of another primary case. So the postpositional cases are accusative, dative, simulative, just meaning like, causal, because of, comitative, meaning and or with, locative, in, at, this kind of thing, and instrumental, with or by means of. And what we're going to do, we're going to take these. Let's find a nice noun that we can use. So let's go to our comparative lexicon and let's find a really juicy noun. A really juicy noun, maybe Justamija Qal, friend. Yeah, let's use that, Justamija Qal. And we are going to, so this is actually a derived form of its own. It's a nominalized verb from the verb musata, friendly. So what we're going to do is we are going to take this and put it into, oh, that's got the other sound changes in it, so 1 second. So this noun goes into Justamija as mistak, meaning friend. So that is going to be our nominative case, mistak. So nominative is going to be just mistak. And then we need to, I don't know if we want to, let's write it out in full, nominative. And then let's take our other case forms and we'll go find there it is. So we have nominative, genitive, vocative, and all of these. Oh, we've overridden our verb, but that's fine. You go down here. Excellent. Okay, so we have mistak, and mistak will be the same for vocative because nothing changes there. And then I need to get our sound changes for Justamija. This is long. And we're going to put it into Lexergy. Okay, and if you're not familiar with Lexergy, Lexergy is kind of an awesome sound change applier, which I learned about from you, from the community. Thank you so much. This has changed my life. So ignore this. This is something I was working on before. You will see what that pertains to later. So we have musataha qal, and let's just verify that it does in fact, indact, in feed, I don't know. Whether it does actually go to mistak. It does. Okay, so we have mistak. This 2 here is just indicating that it's a heavy syllable, which we need for stress assignment, but you don't have to worry about it. Mistak. So let's see what happens when we add other endings to it. So let's find, where are our other endings? Our other endings are in the protocol grammar, and we have these forms. So this is going to be interesting. Musataha qal, musataha qacha, musataha qal uque, musataha qal nama, musataha qal ufo. I'm not going to say them all because it's getting a bit repetitive even for me. And we have all these lovely case forms, and basically we can just run them through our sound changes. And so let's do it. And I believe we will have something kind of fun at the end of it. So boom. Excellent. And it even worked. Sometimes it doesn't work and then I flail. But here it actually worked. So what do we have? Can we make this a bit bigger? We can't. Okay, that's fine. So remove these and let's just get the forms. So we have, for the nominative and vocative, we have mistak. For the genitive, musataha qacha, we just have mistak as well. Because we're deleting schwas and we are removing these intervocalic ch. Okay, so that gets us the same thing. But then here's where it gets kind of interesting. So when we have this form musataha qal, which I believe is the accusative. Is that the accusative? Remind me. Yes, it is. It's the accusative. We get something very different. We get mistariri. So this ends up looking in our orthography like M-I-S-T-A Q-I-X-I. And you may be wondering why the first voiced velar fricative is Q and the second is X. So this requires a bit of a detour, and I'll introduce a little thing I did off screen. I know I'm not supposed to do things off screen, but this just bothered me. So we have in Justamija a rule where obstruents are voiced intervocalically. So we have, this is why we have a, what's going on is this velarized, this labiovelar stop is going to turn into a uvular fricative, a voiceless uvular fricative in Justamija Qal. And because it is intervocalic, it's going to be between these two E vowels in Justamija. So we get, instead of I-chi, we get I-ri. Okay, great. That, so far, so good. The, this form, oh, no, I think I've made a mistake. I've made a mistake again. Okay, so this should actually be Q-I-Q-I. Okay, apologies. Sometimes I get a bit mixed up with these things. We can find another version, another word that has that property. Let's just, so I can explain this, let's just imagine that instead of uque, we had uque, and then it would be true. Okay, so this, this voiceless velar voiceless uvular fricative, h, gets voiced in between the two vowels, iri. What happens to the voiceless uvular stop? The voiceless uvular stop also should get voiced in between two vowels because it is an obstruent as well. But there's something about voiced uvular stops that's typologically a bit rare. And what often happens is you will get a voiced velar fricative matching with a voiceless, voiced uvular fricative matching with a voiceless uvular stop. Whew. Okay, so why is that? One explanation that I have seen when I briefly looked it up sometime over the past few days is that for voicing you need the tongue root to be a little bit advanced, and for uvulars you need the tongue root to be a little bit retracted. Or maybe it's not the tongue root, maybe it's the very back of the tongue body, but something back there is at cross purposes. And so that's what turns us against voiced uvular stops. And so when we have a voiceless uvular stop intervocalically, it's going to spirantize. It's going to turn into a voiced uvular fricative. That's the new development. Mistariri. Now I'll turn back to what it actually is, because essentially what it is we're merging uvular stops and fricatives in intervocalic position. Both are going to a voiced fricative. Mistariri. Clear as mud. Raven, I have not yet decided against the vowel coalescence rules. I just haven't revisited it yet. I think it might actually be kind of cool. But yeah, to be honest, I totally forgot. Now that you mention it again, I'm once again intrigued. So perhaps we can play with that as well. I'm always reticent to play with Lexergy on screen because it's sometimes people find it painful to watch someone struggling through something, and that's something I'm hoping to avoid causing pain if at all possible, but it's sometimes inevitable. So we have this form mistak, mistari, mistak. This mistari is accusative, and this is genitive. So we have a nice syncretism here between nominative, genitive, and vocative. Okay, so now we can move on to dative. After all that ultra clear explanation of the merger, we can revisit that if it wasn't clear a bit later. So here we have mistarinam. And the orthography is more phonemic, as often orthographies are. Mistarinam. Note that the stress here is on the antepenultimate syllable, sta. And the stress here is on the penultimate syllable, ri. So mistariri, mistarinam. And this has to do with the vagaries of which syllables get lose their vowels. The position of stress gets shuffled about due to the loss of certain vowels. Okay, so then we can have this relevant question coming up from Moon Truther. Both intervocalic Q and X are pronounced as a voiced uvular fricative. Exactly. The thing that determines the symbol we write in the romanization is, we could have two. There could be two answers. One is etymology. We would need to know a bit more about the con world in order to ascertain whether that is a relevant factor. Whether they would be aware of the etymologies of these words. But in the case of mistak, we have an alternation. And so that is going to weigh against us using X for this one. But for this one, we have no alternation. because the form is uque, it's never going to actually show up as a stop. So in that case, we may actually want to write it like this. Mistariri. That I could see doing. Because it wouldn't be accessible to the speakers of this language that this is secretly, underlyingly a stop rather than a fricative. Because there'd be no independent evidence for that. That would just be, if you imagine a learner of this language being presented with this iri form, why would the learner say, that must be a stop? I think the simpler explanation is that is a fricative. So we could actually write it like this. And I actually like that a little bit better. That's a good point. Thank you. Okay, so then we have our similative, the thing that means like. And this is our ufo suffix. What does it come into? Mistarivu. Mistarivu. So how are we going to write that? M-I-S-T-A-Q I-F-U. That sounds a bit off when I say it, when I spell it out like that. But mistarivu. Mistarivu. Excuse me. Why is the stress being attracted to this syllable? I'll write all the cases where we have penultimate stress like that, just so that we know. Because we have these vowels in hiatus in the protoform, and that's attracting stress. Okay. Causal. Musataqua pina. Pina. I shouldn't aspirate that. We get mistaribin. Mistaribin. Comitative, we get mistakpa. Mistakpa. And then for locative, we get mistakmu. And then for instrumental, we get mistakmi. Yeah. Or if our rule, I forget, does our rule... No, our rule is between vowels, not between sonorants. And then Raven, if we have the coalescence, yeah, what we could do, what we could do. Yeah, let's just play with it without using lexergy. Let's just play with it. So if we had a coalescence, if we went u, if schwa u is becoming o, a long o, then we would have mistahuri. Yes. Greetings, George. Welcome. Mistahuri. So that's an option. Do we have any other cases? Yeah, we have this here too. So mistarufo, ruvo, ruvu, something like that. So we have the same, which is going to be u. And so we have that. Cool. So that's a kind of a cool noun paradigm. I like it. I like the fact that we have stress shifting suffixes. That's kind of cool. Even though we don't have contrastive vowel length in Justamija, we have the ghost of contrastive vowel length in an earlier form of the language. Yeah. How to use the sound changer? This is quite the question. It's actually fairly complicated, but oh, apologies. Yeah, I've cut something off. Thank you, Adam. The sound changer is, I'll show you. Here's the documentation. As you can see, yeah, it's involved. But the basic principle, if you are not familiar with sound, I don't know if you're familiar with sound changers, this might be review, but the basic principle is you have rules that take something and turn it to something else in a particular environment. So if you wanted to express something like the vowel O raises to U when at the end of a word, you know, this is I think something that happens in Portuguese. We would write it like this. So the thing that changes on the left, O, what the outcome of the changes on the right of the arrow, and then the slash, and then the environment. And the environment is written with this underscore placeholder representing the thing that changes, and then you can have things on its left and things on its right. So here we have this symbol which refers to the edge of the word on the right, indicating that this change occurs only when the sound is in word final position. Yeah. So Lexergy is a really, really, really impressive, sound changer. As Moon points out, it's practically a programming language unto itself. It allows you to do a ton of things, and I feel like I haven't even really scratched the surface of it. But it was a good. It's not simple, and you have to learn its ways, but it'll get the job very well done. So basically what we have here is this very simple verb paradigm. I see something and I say it. This is my curse. This very simple sound change here, and essentially what we have all throughout here are more elaborate versions of that, and some things that help Lexergy do its job. So we can look at that in depth at some point, but I think for now maybe we should look and see if there's another kind of noun that might have a different paradigm, so we can kind of keep on topic for the people who are watching on YouTube. I know they like things to be relatively focused, which means I'm completely out of luck, but Okay, so let's see. We can let's put in another noun. What would be a good one? Something with a lot of schwas in it, because that's going to end up being interesting. Okay. From our fable, we have the word for crow. Huasachqua. And since this has the chaqua as well, it's going to probably have some similarities, but I think it would be nice to know what happens with it. The difference, of course, is that we have a chaqua suffix on the on musatachaqua, and we have chaqua on huasachqua. And the reason for that, it's a few videos back, but it has to do with what kind of a stem class the verb was in proto-Qal. Okay, question before I move on from Raven, is this the main call? So this is Justamija Qal. This is the kind of the core language that we've been working on, other than the proto-language. So this was our starting point. We're kind of coming back to the starting point and fleshing it out with our knowledge that we've gained from creating the proto-language. And then after that, we will go over and look at Lang 3b and give it a proper name. That's our secondary language in this family. And we have all sorts of other ones. I'm kind of getting the urge to make a whole con world for this. So stay tuned for that. There may be things slightly in the works. Stay tuned. So let's put some case forms on this. Huasachqua. Okay. My voice is gonna give out if I try to pronounce all of these. So let me just go here and get our forms, and let's go back to Lexergy. We'll put them all in. And there we go. And what was I going to say? Raven, think about maybe what we're going to, how we're going to coalesce. If we're going to do coalescence, what's going to happen with ah? so we can have two alternatives with and without coalescence, and we can decide which one we like best. Okay, so fingers crossed. Will this work? Yes. Okay. So this is interesting. We started out with this word as hoska in Justamija Qal. And we have now gone on so many peregrinations and wanderings that we've actually lost that form in the descendant language in Justamija. We are now at chazira. But we do have forms. Many of the oblique forms are formed on this root chaska or chaska. So maybe there's a chance for some analogy to play a role here. Because if we have widely divergent forms in different cells of a paradigm, the temptation for analogy to get to work and regularize is strong. So, but let's just see what happens without any analogy, and then we can move on from there. So we have me stock friend. So let's put this over here. And I'll move this over to, I don't know, somewhere down here. And then let's write in what we have for crow. So we have chazira. So this is going to be a Q or an X. Let's just leave it as a Q for now. Let's bold this. Genitive is going to look the same. Mistak. Bach is going to look the same. These are always the same. Accusative is going to be chaskari. And here's good evidence that we need this to be a stop rather than a fricative, because in the accusative form it is a stop, while it's ambiguous in the nominative, genitive, and vocative. So we have chazira, haskari. What else? Chaskanam. I really like the sound of this. Haskari, chaskanam, chaskavu. So just so we're marking the irregular stress, or not irregular, but the unexpected stress. Chaskabin, and then chazira ba, chazira ma, chazira mi. Chazira mi. Yeah, okay. So this is kind of cool. We have these chazira forms, and then we have these chaska forms. And it almost starts to look a little bit like root and pattern morphology, like in Semitic. You can see how, taken to its extreme, you would get a form like a phenomenon like root and pattern morphology, where you have a root that's basically made up of consonants only, and then with different vowels and different arrangements in between and around those consonants, you get different forms of a root. Okay. Yes. All right. Catching up on the chat here. Yeah, so we might have ao go to o, which would merge with u, and so that would give us, instead of chaskari, it would be haskuri. So basically it would give us that. Or haskari. So I guess, yeah, so if it has a cot merger as and I'm reading out, sorry, I realized now that the chat's not showing up. So if you're watching this in the future and the chat doesn't show up properly, I'll try and endeavor to read out what people say that I see, so that you can understand what I'm referring to. So Raven writes, we can apply the caught merger, which if you're not familiar with that, I am a speaker of a variety of English that has this merger, where the vowels o and a are merged to a. So caught, C-O-T, caught, pronounced the same. And so Raven's mentioning this in the context that we may have something like ow going to open O, which I can copy and paste here. And then what's the fate of this open O? Is it going to turn into a more closed O that's going to turn to oo? One possibility. Or if we have the caught merger in Justamija, then it would turn into a. Different options. Catching up on the chat a bit too. George asks, what is the goal of Qal? It's kind of its own goal. I think to me, the goal of this language family is just to make a cool language family and to have something to share with those of you who enjoy watching the process. So that's I don't have any grander goals, with respect to making some sort of work of fiction or anything like that. However, it's very hard for me to resist once we go down this road for such a ways. It's very hard for me to resist not conlanging, so not conworlding. So building up a little bit of a history, and because so much of language and history are intertwined, especially when you take this heavily diachronic approach that we've been taking. The goal is kind of amorphous, and it may grow as we go. So I'm currently, there's a war raging inside my soul about whether we want to do any world building for this world. And I have to say the forces of world building are well, they have the upper hand. I'm just trying to figure out how to make that entertaining for you. Because a lot of world building, at least in my process, is, there's a lot of this, there's a lot of this. There's a good deal of, so I want to make sure that there's something engaging for you, because I think it's not great to watch me just sit and ponder. It's also not great for all the work to be done off screen and for me to come back and just show you. So I'm trying to figure out a way to keep that relatively entertaining. I'm going to put in a cut for YouTube here, because I think we've given a good overview of what happens to the noun paradigm. And then so I'll cut for YouTube. We'll go back here and thank those of you on YouTube who've been watching and joining us in our adventures in nouns. Come back. We will have more conlanging for you. Oh yeah, and because it's YouTube, I have to say like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind, if you're in the neighborhood. All right, that's that.